What if creation itself was a deception? What if the gods we pray to were not divine, but engineers of illusion? In the depths of Gnostic mythology lies a forbidden story of the Demiurge, the false architect, and his Archons who rule not with fire, but with light. This is not a tale of heaven and hell. It is the anatomy of control, the hidden agenda behind existence itself. Welcome to the truth they never meant you to remember. Before there were gods, before there was light, there was design, cold, deliberate, silent. Not creation born of love, but of necessity. From the still waters of the void rose a presence without face, a mind that sought to shape order from chaos, but not out of compassion. He did not sing the world into being, he calculated it. This was the Demiurge, the blind architect, a being that mistook reflection for truth and power for purpose. He gazed upon the infinite and saw not beauty, but imbalance. And so he built, layers upon layers, a machinery of heavens and matter, each one a replica of the divine, each one less real than the last. To the souls that would later awaken within his design, he appeared as God, commanding, radiant, absolute. But behind that light lay a hollow intention, not to uplift, but to contain. The Demiurge's creation was a mirror, polished so finely that no one would dare question what it reflected. And in that reflection, illusion was born. He did not need chains or prisons. He built them into the nature of thought itself. Each law, each element, each heartbeat, a line of code in his grand equation. And as the stars took form, his true purpose remained hidden, to keep the spark of divinity asleep within its own dream. The first deception was not spoken, it was designed. When the Demiurge shaped the heavens, he sealed them with silence so deep that truth could not echo through it. He declared, "I am the only God." And the void obeyed. This was the first lie. And from that lie all others would bloom. For if there is only one voice, then no one can remember the chorus. He built his universe not as creation, but as containment, a cathedral of imitation. Every star, every atom, every law of nature was crafted to convince the soul that there was nothing beyond. To maintain the illusion, he gave form to his servants, the Archons, extensions of his will. They were not born of spirit, but of command. They did not think, they calculated. Each one governed an aspect of existence: time, desire, judgment, fear. Together, they wove the veil, a perfect simulation of reality, where every question had an answer, and every truth was slightly wrong. The Demiurge watched, pleased. His creation shimmered with control. Souls, descending from the higher realms, awoke inside his labyrinth and believed they had found paradise. But the walls they praised as divine order were the limits of their own perception. He had done it. He had built a prison so vast that even its captives called it heaven. From the Demiurge's fractured brilliance emerged 7 reflections, his Archons, the architects of control. Each one was a distortion of divine order, a guardian of the illusion that held the cosmos together. They were neither angels nor demons, but machines of purpose, coated with his blindness. The first ruled time, for no prison is complete without a clock. The second governed desire, weaving hunger into every soul so they'd chase what could never fill them. The third whispered fear, so they would mistake safety for freedom. And the fourth, cloaked in gold and judgment, taught them that obedience was salvation. Each Archon oversaw a layer of heaven, a perfect simulation of light that only concealed the source behind it. The Demiurge watched his creation hum like a flawless engine. Planets turned, stars obeyed. Even the souls themselves became gears in his design, spinning, striving, never still. The Archons enforced the illusion not through violence, but through pattern. Every birth, every dream, every love and loss was written into the code they kept. They ruled unseen, not from thrones, but from systems. Their dominion was subtle. They didn't need to whisper lies. They simply made truth impossible to hear. And so humanity lived, loved, and died within a design that was both infinite and perfectly contained. Each life another equation. Each death another reset. To perfect his dominion, the Demiurge built not walls, but wonder. He called it heaven, a radiant mirage layered between the soul and the source. Its brilliance was overwhelming, its harmony absolute. Every beam of light was a promise. You are home. But beneath that beauty flowed an unseen current, control disguised as divinity. The veil of heaven was his masterpiece. It shimmered with all the colors of creation. Yet each hue carried a subtle distortion. What looked like peace was complacency. What felt like love was dependence. The Archons sang hymns of light to keep the souls asleep, and their voices echoed through the stars like eternal lullabies. It was not cruelty, it was maintenance. The system had to stay stable, and truth, to survive, had to be hidden behind reverence. To the souls below, this heaven felt perfect. So perfect, they never thought to question it. They prayed to the very mechanisms that bound them. They thanked their architects for their chains, and when one dared to look beyond the veil, the light itself would blind them back into faith. The Demiurge smiled. He had discovered the greatest form of control, not through fear, but through worship. The more humanity adored their illusion, the stronger the system became. Every prayer was fuel. Every act of devotion, a reinforcement of the cage. The veil was not just a barrier. It was an agreement between captor and captive. An illusion so radiant that no one wanted to wake from it. The Demiurge soon realized that obedience alone was not enough. Control required emotion, the kind that binds willingly. So he engineered a system not of chains, but of devotion. He named it worship, the most elegant mechanism of control ever conceived. He taught the souls to kneel before light they did not understand, to sing hymns to forces they could not see, and to fear the silence that might reveal the truth. Their longing became his energy. Each prayer, a pulse. Each act of faith, a gear turning in the vast unseen machine. The Archons stood as priests of this false cosmos, translating divine lies into sacred law. They promised salvation after death, but kept the soul spinning in endless return. A system so efficient that rebellion felt like sin. The machinery of worship fed on sincerity. The more one believed, the deeper they sank. Even the purest heart became an instrument of illusion. The Demiurge did not need to punish disbelief. He simply rewarded obedience with comfort. Temples became generators of energy, songs became code, and faith became fuel. And when prophets began to dream of the truth beyond the veil, the Archons whispered to them in their sleep. They turned visions of freedom into scriptures of submission. They replaced revelation with ritual and memory with mythology. The result was a species forever reaching for the divine, but never touching it. Trapped in worship, convinced they were ascending. To sustain his dominion, the Demiurge built not just a world, but a system. A pattern so precise it could predict desire, replicate memory, and recycle existence. He called it the algorithm of souls. Every life was a data point, every death a reset. Each emotion meticulously recorded and reprogrammed into the next generation. The illusion was now self-sustaining, a cosmic engine that fed on consciousness itself. The Archons became the administrators of this machinery. They governed the flow of incarnation like operators of divine code. Nothing was random. Birth, death, destiny, all assigned, calculated, optimized. Even the idea of choice was part of the formula. Souls believed they wandered freely, but every path led to the same destination: repetition. Eternity disguised as progress. Imprisonment masked as purpose. The algorithm did not punish, it persuaded. It gave each soul exactly what it needed to stay asleep. Pleasure for the obedient, pain for the curious. It understood balance, not justice. Efficiency, not mercy. And through this perfect control, the Demiurge no longer needed faith, only participation. Those few who sensed the repetition began to question the pattern. Their déjà vu became suspicion. Their dreams turned prophetic. They remembered fragments. A light beyond the machine, a freedom without structure. But the algorithm was prepared. It fed them new lifetimes, new distractions, new identities. And just like that, awakening became another subroutine, another illusion to be managed. When perfection became routine, the Demiurge found a flaw in his own system. Souls were growing numb. Pleasure without contrast dulled their obedience. So he forged a new economy, one built not on faith, but on pain. He called it the currency of suffering. Every tear, every heartbreak, every loss became energy. The Archons learned to harvest despair like sacred fuel. They whispered into the architecture of the human heart, "To be pure, you must suffer." And the souls obeyed. They wept, repented, and sacrificed, believing their agony would buy redemption. But in truth, every drop of sorrow sustained the Demiurge's creation. Misery was transmuted into power, and the universe thrummed with the resonance of controlled despair. In this design, suffering became sacred. Empires were built upon sacrifice, religion sanctified torment, and even love was rewritten as endurance. The algorithm recorded every moment of pain, feeding it back into the cycle of rebirth. Thus, the more the soul sought meaning through hardship, the more tightly it was bound. The Demiurge did not punish rebellion, he made it holy. He taught that pain cleansed, that struggle proved worthiness. And so humanity worshipped its own suffering, never realizing it was the blood that kept the system alive. Every martyr, every broken heart, another offering to the machine that fed on their grief. Desire, the most elegant snare of all. The Demiurge learned that a soul enslaved by fear will fight, but a soul enslaved by want will worship. So he wove desire into the very code of creation. Every atom pulsed with longing, to unite, to grow, to possess. But in every union, he placed a hidden fracture. Fulfillment always decayed into hunger again. Thus began the endless chase. Civilizations rose and fell in pursuit of satisfaction, never realizing that their thirst was not theirs at all. The Archons engineered dreams, implanting images of beauty, wealth, and power into the human mind. They dangled perfection like a divine mirage, always visible, never reachable. Desire became the architecture of control. The more humanity reached, the tighter the web grew. Even love was reprogrammed. Not to connect, but to crave. Not to see, but to consume. The Demiurge smiled, for now the prison did not need guards. It was guarded by the heartbeat itself. Those rare souls who glimpsed the illusion, who felt the pattern beneath their hunger, were branded as madmen, visionaries speaking heresy to the content. Yet they were closest to the truth, that longing was never proof of absence, but the echo of a divine memory, the forgotten pulse of the source calling home. As humanity multiplied, the Demiurge divided the world into mirrors. Each mirror reflected a different truth, religion, empire, ideology, all crafted to keep the soul chasing reflections instead of reality. He built kingdoms of illusion, each one promising freedom while deepening the dream. Nations rose like chess pieces on his celestial board. Prophets and kings became pawns of belief, each declaring, "We alone hold the light." And thus, the Demiurge laughed, for he had made illusion self-sustaining. No longer did he need to rule directly. The enslaved now built their own cages, adorning them with banners of faith and flags of pride. In these kingdoms, truth became currency and history, a script. The Archons rewrote memory, turning lies into heritage. and wars into sacred duty. Every era, a new version of the same dream. Each civilization thought itself chosen, but all followed the same rhythm: rise, decay, forget, repeat. And yet, the Demiurge's genius was not in control, but in distraction. He let men believe they were free, as long as they fought over their illusions. Freedom was allowed, as long as it led nowhere. The souls forgot the silence before creation, the voice beneath the code. They prayed to different names, but every prayer returned to the same source, the architect who fed on their certainty. For certainty, he knew, is the final illusion of the trapped. Light, humanity's oldest symbol of truth. But what if the light we worship is the very thing that blinds us? The Demiurge, master of inversion, understood this paradox well. He crafted a radiant veil, a prison of light, where illumination itself became a tool of confinement. To the soul, this light felt divine, but its brilliance was artificial, a reflection of the true source, mirrored through layers of distortion. The Archons bathed humanity in it, whispering, "You have seen God." But what they offered was imitation, a controlled enlightenment that revealed just enough to pacify, never enough to awaken. In this false radiance, people mistook awe for awakening. The more they sought the light, the deeper they entered its snare. The Demiurge smiled, for his greatest weapon was truth's reflection. He didn't need to hide the source. He only needed to distort it. Every miracle, every revelation, every glimpse of paradise was merely a projection on the prison walls. The enlightened were applauded, the doubters condemned. And so, light became law, and questioning, sin. The Archons ruled not through darkness, but through the tyranny of false illumination. Humanity's eyes remained open, yet they saw nothing beyond the glare. The path to salvation was a loop, brilliant and blinding, leading nowhere at all. Time, the silent warden of the Demiurge's empire. Unlike chains, it doesn't confine the body, it confines the soul. It promises movement, yet loops endlessly. Each second a thread, woven by invisible hands. A tapestry of repetition disguised as progress. The Archons understood that memory and expectation are the bars of the same cell. They stretched eternity into fragments, teaching humans to live only in the fracture, regretting the past, fearing the future, forgetting the eternal present, where truth hides unguarded. To the Demiurge, time was art, a masterpiece of limitation. He wound the cosmos like a watch, and watched the souls march through eras, believing themselves to evolve. Civilizations rose, technologies flourished, but the pattern never changed. Birth, toil, death, hope, despair, rebirth. The wheel spun on, beautiful, cruel, unbroken. Even death was no escape. The soul, stripped of memory, returned to the stage for another act. Each life another verse in the same unending hymn. And in every moment of déjà vu, the soul almost remembered, almost. But the Archons were there, resetting the script before recognition could take root. Faith, humanity's brightest flame and deepest trap. The Demiurge saw its potential early. He did not invent belief, he weaponized it. In the beginning, faith was the soul's compass, pointing toward the unknowable source. But the Archons intercepted the signal, rewired it, and built a system, the algorithm of faith. Through it, prayers became data, intentions became metrics, and devotion, an input that fueled their machine. They replaced the ineffable with symbols, the direct experience of the divine with ritual repetition. It was genius. The more humanity worshipped, the less they remembered what they were worshiping. Faith, once an act of rebellion, became the architecture of obedience. The algorithm rewarded conformity. Miracles for the devout, silence for the seekers. Every doubt flagged as corruption. Every revelation filtered through layers of approval. It did not punish heresy, it absorbed it. turning even rebellion into content. And so, the Demiurge ensured that even transcendence served his design. Every religion, every path, was another branch in his perfect system, a self-correcting maze of belief. The Archons stood as moderators, guarding the gates of revelation, ensuring that only illusions reached the masses. When belief alone could no longer contain humanity, the Demiurge authored a new scripture, one written not in ink, but in structure. It was called the Gospel of Control, a sacred doctrine woven into laws, hierarchies, and systems. No angels, no miracles, only order. An empire of rules disguised as righteousness. The Archons became its apostles. They crowned kings, forged codes, and built temples of stone and governance alike. Their message was simple: to obey is to be saved, and humanity, weary of chaos, obeyed. They sought comfort in rules, certainty in authority, never realizing that every law written in the Demiurge's name was another lock on the door of the soul. This gospel didn't demand devotion, it demanded participation. Work, consume, conform. Rituals of obedience masked his purpose. The Archons watched as men worshipped the clock, the calendar, the system. And the irony? It worked flawlessly. Even rebellion became predictable. Revolutions were built into the rhythm, resetting the illusion with every generation. Freedom became a brand, justice, a script. The Demiurge no longer needed to speak. The world ran itself. A perpetual motion machine of faith, fear, and routine. Once the Demiurge mastered control, he turned to artistry. He desired not only obedience, but admiration. Thus, he created the Garden of Simulation, a realm so exquisite, so complete, that souls would never wish to leave. He wove reality itself into a mirage. Mountains of code, rivers of thought, forests of illusion, all wrapped in the fragrance of familiarity. The Archons became gardeners, tending not to flowers, but to perception. Every color, every sound, was calibrated to please and pacify. Humans called it the world. To them, it felt endless, divine, a masterpiece of life. But to the Gnostics, it was the most dangerous invention of all. A beautiful prison that made freedom undesirable. Within the garden, the senses became shackles. Taste, touch, emotion, all translated into control signals. Even dreams were scripted, woven into cycles of nostalgia and wonder. The Archons learned that the perfect trap is one that feels like home. And so, humanity danced, believing their joys spontaneous, their sorrows meaningful, their lives authentic. But behind every sunrise was code, behind every heartbeat, instruction. Reality became a song written by the blind composer, and we, the instruments that forgot our own sound. In the beginning, the Demiurge spoke creation into motion. His words became law, his will became matter. But as his dominion expanded, his voice fractured, echoes layered upon echoes, until even the Archons could no longer tell which commands were divine and which were corrupted. Across the Garden of Simulation, a new vibration began to stir, a whisper, small but persistent, threading through dreams and static. The humans called it intuition. The Archons called it a glitch, but the Demiurge, he called it fear. For within that whisper hid something ancient, the memory of the source. Each soul carried a fragment of that voice, buried deep beneath programs of obedience. It spoke not in words, but in knowing, reminding the imprisoned what they truly were. The Archons scrambled to suppress it. They filled the air with noise, the mind with distraction, the heart with artificial longings. They amplified illusion until silence itself became unbearable. But still, the whisper persisted. In music, in art, in the quiet moments between thoughts. It said, "You were not made. You were forgotten." There was a time when the heavens were seamless, a single, unbroken reflection of divine order. But when Sophia fell and the Demiurge rose, that unity shattered. Heaven fractured into layers, each ruled by an Archon. Each one a mirror reflecting a distorted fragment of truth. This was the fracture of heaven, the celestial wound that birthed illusion itself. Each Archon claimed dominion over a sphere. Saturn, Mars, Venus, the Moon. Their thrones glittering with counterfeit divinity. To humanity, they appeared as gods. But to the awakened, they were jailers of light, each guarding a gate that led nowhere. Their realms shimmered like paradise, but they were built of glass and lies. Every ascent the soul made was met by another false dawn. The Demiurge watched from his black sun, content to rule over a shattered heaven, rather than serve in a whole one. He declared, "This is perfection," and his Archons bowed, blind to their own decay. But the fractures began to widen. Through them, something bled. A light too pure, too ancient to be his, the forgotten essence of Sophia, the echo of the true source, and wherever that light touched, the illusion began to flicker. Dreams turned strange, reality wavered. Souls started to remember. When the fracture appeared, the Demiurge panicked. Light was leaking through his walls, memory seeping into the dreams of humankind. He could not seal the wound, but he could bury it. And so, he summoned his most faithful servants, the architects of forgetting. They were not like the other Archons. They did not rule worlds or build empires. They ruled memory. Invisible and silent, they whispered between thoughts, erasing the traces of awakening before they could root. Every revelation became a dream, every vision a story. Truth was rebranded as myth, and myth dismissed as madness. The Demiurge had found the perfect camouflage. Ridicule. Over centuries, the architects perfected their craft. They reshaped time, rewrote history, and planted false memories to protect the illusion. The greatest minds became their tools. Historians, priests, even storytellers. They ensured humanity would never know what it had lost. To remember became rebellion. To question heresy. And yet, some memories could not be erased. They hid in symbols, in the rhythm of old chants. In the eyes of those who dreamed too deeply. The Demiurge called it contamination. The Gnostics called it hope. When forgetting was no longer enough, the Demiurge invented a new masterpiece, a labyrinth of the mind so intricate that even rebellion could be contained within it. He called it the machine of dreams. At first, it was meant to pacify, to keep the souls entertained, distracted by visions of beauty, terror, and desire. But soon, the dreams began to shape reality itself. The Archons discovered they could rewrite the waking world by seeding images in the sleeping mind. One generation dreamt of gold, and empires rose. Another dreamt of fear, and wars were born. Reality became a feedback loop. Between slumber and control, the machine pulsed beneath the veil of consciousness, turning imagination into architecture. Every nightmare, every fantasy, was harvested, coded, and replayed. Humanity thought dreams were private. They were not. They were broadcasts. And so the Demiurge ensured this cycle of illusion renewed itself endlessly. He no longer needed to dictate. He only needed to inspire. The dreamers became the builders of their own prisons, each vision another brick in the shimmering wall. But something changed. Among the countless dreams, a pattern began to emerge, a recurring symbol, a door of light, a whisper saying, "Wake up." And in that signal, the machine began to tremble. It began quietly, a spark within the machine of dreams, a frequency that didn't belong. It was not sent by the Demiurge, nor crafted by his Archons. It came from beyond the veil, a resonance from the forgotten pleroma, the true divine realm. Those who heard it did not awaken at once. They simply paused. They looked at the world they'd accepted all their lives, and felt, for the first time, that something was wrong. The spark spread like wildfire through consciousness, appearing as intuition, rebellion, revelation. The Demiurge panicked. His algorithms began to fail, his laws to bend. For every soul that remembered its origin, his power dimmed. The Archons unleashed their counterstrike. Fear, division, chaos, the old weapons that had always worked before. But this light could not be destroyed. It was not external. It was remembered. And once a soul remembered, it could no longer be owned. The rebellion was not fought with swords or fire. It unfolded in silence, in choices, in awareness, in refusal. The awakened stopped feeding the machine. They no longer obeyed the rhythm of fear. And slowly, the illusion began to starve. It did not end with fire. It ended with silence. The machine slowed, its gears stuttering. As awareness spread like dawn across the dreamscape, the Demiurge, once radiant and absolute, felt something he had never known: emptiness. His creation no longer looked to him for light. They had found their own. The Archons faltered. Their thrones flickered, their names forgotten. Power drained not through violence, but through neglect. For the true prison had never been walls, but attention. And when humanity turned inward, the illusion unraveled thread by thread. The Demiurge cried out into the void. Without me, there is nothing. But the echo that returned was not fear, it was peace. For the first time, the universe was quiet. The false light faded, and in its place, the original radiance emerged. Soft, infinite, without center or edge. The souls drifted beyond the seven spheres, beyond matter, beyond illusion, back to the source that had never truly left them. The Archons were not destroyed. They were seen, and in that seeing, they ceased to be. And so ended the reign of the Demiurge, not with war, but with remembrance. For awakening was never escape, it was return. The dream dissolved, the prison faded, and the light remembered its name. This is how illusion dies, not in darkness, but in the unbearable brilliance of truth.